More than 237 bales of marijuana were brought ashore last night by Coast Guard cutters Cherokee and Point Arena and turned over to federal authorities. The pot had been in the Colombian fishing vessel Don Frank, which sank Wednesday about 40 miles east of Cape Henry. The Coast Guard spent more than 13 hours gathering the bundles of marijuana that periodically surfaced from the ocean floor. Authorities discovered the pot aboard while on a routine rescue mission Tuesday and began towing it to Norfolk when the boat sank. At a news conference, Coast Guard officials say the vessel appeared suspicious.
Certainly any vessel in the situation that Don Frank would have been suspicious if we had just happened upon it, since the fact that it did not show any name, numbers, or port of registry on its stern. None of that was apparent on the hull when we found it. So that would have been definitely caused me to have some suspicion of it. The sudden increase may be due to the fact that we have just happened upon it, and also it may be connected to the reported large harvest in Colombia that took place in October and late fall and is now seeing its way into the United States.
7 of the 8 crew members are being held at the Virginia Beach jail, and officials say they will be arraigned Friday before a federal magistrate on charges of importation of marijuana. The 8th crew member is presumed drowned. While the Coast Guard says it will not increase its surveillance as a result of this latest drug seizure, officials say it will be more alert on its regular sea patrols. Ava Hurdle, Area 10 Eyewitness News at the Naval Amphibious Base.
The 7 Colombian crewmen were brought to the federal courthouse in Norfolk for their preliminary hearing. They are facing charges of possession of marijuana with intent to import the drug into the United States. Bail for one of them, Edmundo Howard Arias, has been set for $250,000. This because Arias was aboard another vessel 2 years ago, which the Coast Guard seized. Bail for the other 6 has been set for $10,000 each. The crewmen were arrested after their vessel, carrying the marijuana, sank several miles off of Cape Henry. The Coast Guard was able to retrieve more than 260 bales of the pot, which they unloaded in Norfolk Wednesday night. The pot probably to be used as evidence against the 7. Because the crewmen knew little or no English, the court appointed an interpreter, Robert Woitich, to translate the court proceedings into Spanish for the crewmen. The defense attorney, Jack Drescher, asked the court if the date for the preliminary hearing could be postponed so he could have more time to prepare his case of defense.
The U.S. Magistrate Gilbert Swank granted that postponement. The new preliminary hearing date is set for January 12th. Defense attorney Jack Drescher technically represents only one of the clients, so another reason that he asked for postponement is to procure other attorneys for the 6 other defendants. Penny Williams, Area 10 Eyewitness News in front of the federal courthouse in Norfolk.
The business of smuggling marijuana is a growing one. The U.S. Coast Guard, by its own admission, is able to capture only 2 out of every 10 ships full of pot that enter the U.S. waters. The rest get away. The Coast Guard is trying to improve on its arrest rate, but as Commander Robert Batek admits, it's difficult, even with a guard at full patrol.
We have had more patrols locally, but until the Cuban operation freed up some of the resources, we weren't able to implement those plans.
Ironically, the Cuban operation, which involved drug enforcement efforts between Florida and Cuban waters, has caused an increase in smugglers skirting those waters and coming into the mid-Atlantic area. But throughout the nation's waters, drug smuggling is on the rise. In 1979, the Coast Guard seized 69 vessels carrying a little more than 1 million pounds of marijuana. Last year, that number had increased to nearly 120 vessels, carrying twice the amount of pot, more than 2 million pounds. As one Coast Guard official put it, 1980 was a record year.
The Coast Guard has 3 C-130 planes at their disposal to spot ship smugglers, but often those planes are used for search and rescue operations. So the Coast Guard is left with 1 plane to cover at least 114,000 square miles. They've asked for more planes, Falcon jets, but that request was made 5 years ago, and those planes might not be ready until as late as 1983. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard has to make do with what they can and try to decrease the number of boat smugglers coming into the Tidewater area. Penny Williams, Area 10 Eyewitness News, Portsmouth.